I've spent all my money on whiskey and beer. I'll go to some hollow.
In early August of 1884, there was an election in Moorhead, a very hotly contested election between Sam Gooden and Wesley Cook Humphreys for sheriff. Humphreys wound up winning the election by a mere 12 votes. You got to realize as well that at that point bars and saloons and everything was open on election day. People did a good deal of drinking. During the course of it, there was an argument. The argument escalated into a fist fight. The fist fight turned into a rock throwing, and the rock throwing turned into shooting. Solomon Bradley, who was in town picking up some medicine for a child, was shot off his horse. 3 people were indicted for this: John C. Day, Floyd Tolliver, and John Martin. Martin and Tolliver later met at the Galt House Bar in December of the same year, 1884. They had some words. Martin whipped out a pistol and shot Tolliver dead.
John Martin was a rounder that no one ever denied. He dipped his hands in murder and off the law defied.
Martin turned himself over to the authorities and was put in the Moorhead jail. John had been indicted for things before. He always managed to come off clean. Because of that feeling, a lot of Floyd's friends were talking about coming to visit the jail with a rope. They transferred Martin to the Winchester jail, and he was down there for 8 days until December 10th. At that time, Alvin Boley appeared to the jailer and had a forged order transferring Martin back to Rowan County. At Farmers, the train was stopped by a couple of Floyd's brothers. Masked men came aboard, and John Martin was shot to death. Things continued to escalate. Craig Tolliver, Floyd's brother, was elected town marshal. Cook Humphrey, the new sheriff. We had a kind of a odd situation. The leader of one faction was the county sheriff, and the leader of the other faction was the marshal of the town. And when Craig got word in Cook Humphreys was at the Martin home, he went out to arrest him. He refused to be arrested. There was another gun battle at the Martin home. Martins were more or less evicted from their own house, according to their story. And as they were heading toward Moorhead, the posse set the house afire.
In the bottom of a whiskey glass, a lurking devil dwells that burns the breath of those who drink and sends their soul to hell.
By this time, the governor seen that they needed to do a little bit more than call a truce, and they did send the state militia in. The Attorney General managed to broker a peace in which Cook Humphrey said he would go to Missouri, and Craig Tolliver said he would leave the area and go to Texas. Now, Cook did go to Missouri. Craig Tolliver left the area for a while and then came back. Craig became police judge of Moorhead. Dr. Henry Logan had been indicted and jailed for conspiring to kill Taylor Young and maybe Allie, his son. There was the thought that Dr. Henry's sons were going to testify on his behalf. So Craig Tolliver and several other people, including one of Taylor Young's sons and the new marshal in town, Marshal Manning, went out to Dr. Henry's home. They eventually threatened to burn the house down if they didn't surrender. The boys were convinced to lay down their weapons and come out and promise safety. They were marched about 40 yards or so to a nearby spring and shot while quote-unquote resisting arrest. The members of the posse, or at least several of them, stomped their bodies in their faces with their hobnail shoes and left them there.
Short life of trouble, a few more words.
Daniel Boone Logan, a cousin of those boys, was asked by Craig Tolliver later what he thought about those deaths. His response did not meet Craig's approval. So Craig sent a note around and told him it would be wise if sundown did not catch him in town. Logan went to Frankfort to talk to Governor Knott and to get the militia brought back in again, and Knott said, we're not going to do that. Why don't you get warrants for the Tollivers' arrest? On the morning of June 22nd, 1887, that posse, numbering somewhere between 50 and 200 people, depending on what account you listen to, surrounded the Tollivers in downtown Moorhead. The Tollivers did spot one of the posse members, and they shot at him, and all heck broke loose. The Tollivers went from one hotel to the other, I believe from the American House to the College Hotel, or vice versa. And that became untenable because of the firepower of their adversaries. They decided to make a break for it. Craig was shot to death along with his cousins, Jay and Bud Tolliver.
Craig lived by gun and died. Bud's Christmas pride. They buried him on the mountainside.
After this, of course, they ordered 4 coffins, and the governor once again sent in the militia. By this time, the state had pretty well had it. They decided that maybe they didn't need to be a Rowan County, and the thing to do would be to abolish the county and throw it back into Morgan and Fleming. Frank and Phoebe Button were sent in. They founded the school to civilize the mountaineers, and it eventually grew into Moorhead State University. And I think it's always important to know where you're coming from, and I think any people need to know their history, because if you don't know where you've been, how in the world can you know where you're going?